The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Right ahead on this edition of Perspectives, we review Mayor Bill de Blasio's State of the City address. What does it actually mean for New Yorkers, and how effective will the mayor be in his first term in office? That's the topic of discussion on this edition of Perspectives with yours truly, Darren Jaime.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective, which shines a light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life. What's your perspective?
And hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Darren Jaime, and of course, we encourage you to stay tuned to Perspectives, where we bring you news, information, and things affecting you. We also want you to stay connected to us on our social networking sites. Hit us up at BronxNet Perspectives on our Facebook page, then also at Twitter. You'll be able to find out about some past episodes, present episodes, and you also get a chance to leave your comments as to what you want to see coming up on a future show. On this present show, we talk about Mayor Bill de Blasio, New York City's new mayor. It's 2014, February, only a month has gone by, but the mayor has already unveiled his State of the City address, and the question is, how's he faring in just 1 month of office? Joining us in the studio are two very special people. We're pleased to be joined by Cindy Tritt, who's a noted blogger. And then also at the same time, we've had him here many times before, Roy Paul, who is a Democratic strategist and a friend of the show. And welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So, as we talk about the mayor, let me start. First of all, Mayor Bill de Blasio gives his State of the City address, and many people were in high anticipation of what the mayor actually had to say. Some people felt as though the mayor's comments were just going to be more campaign rhetoric, and I guess I'll start ladies first. Well, no, let me ask.
Let's start with Cindy.
We want to start with Cindy?
Yeah,
start ladies first?
We're gentlemen.
We're gentlemen, right? So put Cindy on a hot spot. When you heard of the mayor's State of the City address, just give me your thoughts.
I think with Blasio in office now, he's going to be a huge change for New York City. We had Bloomberg for 3 terms. I mean, that's a long time. We haven't had a Democratic mayor in decades. So 1 month we're still feeling him out. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to see what he's capable of. But I will say that all the things that he's been saying in his campaign and all the promises he's made, it's going to be tough for him. It's going to be really tough for him to make do on all those promises, because he is but one man and he's facing an entire Senate GOP, and it's going to be really hard for him. So I think he has quite the battle for him up ahead.
Mm-hmm. Roy?
I can leave. She just Well, I think she's right. And I think to the Senate GOP point, there's a very special election that's about to happen in Southeast Queens. State Senator Malcolm Smith, who you all know has been indicted, and he has 2 challengers. He has caucused with the Independence Group, which is a quasi-Republican group up in Albany, and I bet de Blasio gets involved in that race.
Really?
Absolutely. Against the incumbent Malcolm Smith.
Because?
Well, because right now he needs all the votes that he can get on the Democratic side, because the Senate Republicans have the majority. And with the independents bloc the way that it is, mixing up the support for the Republicans, he needs a Democratic caucus to have more support. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's going to go with the Democrat who's going to oppose Malcolm Smith, who can say, I will support Bill de Blasio's initiatives.
The one thing that was very clear is that, and I think you've hit it on the head, Cindy, is that you have 8 years to get your agenda across. We've seen a lot happen, even in the presidential election, President Obama and what he talked about in terms of change and how that kind of got stalled out over the course of, his first term in office. Can we anticipate, given the governor talking, or I should say Mayor de Blasio talking about this whole new pre-K agenda, that we could see some stalling on this?
Oh, we already have. I mean, the Dean Skelos, the Senate Majority Leader, has already stated he's not going to allow a vote on pre-K funding to tax the wealthiest of Americans, wealthiest of New Yorkers. That is, if that's not a stall, that's pretty much saying it's dead in the water. So if you can't even get it for a vote, it's not going to happen. And so I think that what Bill de Blasio is going to have to do is muster up support outside of the legislative body. And we saw that with the meeting that he did with Reverend Al Sharpton and other clergy members around the city, as he's gearing up for a community fight. He's gearing up to go out into the communities in a grassroots way and say, look, if you really want this, then you're going to have to tell your legislators to pass it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, look at what you said. President Obama, he's hit so many hurdles in his last 8 years of presidency. 6 years so far, but he's hit so many hurdles, and even President Obama has said, forget Congress at this point. I'm going out there and I'm going to make something happen. And I think Blasio is going to need to do the same thing with the pre-K school funding. He needs to just forget the Senate right now and get out into the ground and really kind of build a coalition, a grassroots type coalition, and get some people behind this, because the Senate GOP, they put their foot down. They're going to stop this. They're going to at least stall it for a really long time. So the best way for Blasio to make some moves, at least to start, is to build this coalition, build some kind of movement outside of the legislative body.
You brought up the name of the Reverend Al Sharpton, and I want to ask this question because we did see an end to stop and frisk as we know it. We heard, it's perceived. How much does that play into being able to bring an Al Sharpton to the table and say, listen, you know what, this is my next move. I want to talk about universal pre-K. How big was the whole stop and frisk right now? Because that was something that he ran on, and now to hear the latest developments.
I was really, really excited when Bill de Blasio announced that he would end the New York City appeal of the stop and frisk case. I think that was a huge step for New York City, because we've been struggling so much as a city with racial profiling, and a lot of the communities started developing untrust towards our law enforcement. And I think that was a huge step for Blasio. I think that was probably his best move as a new mayor of New York City. He's gained a lot of support for that move. And it really just, again, segued him into building something with Reverend Al Sharpton. And I think that's just really good moves on Blasio's part to get things started. Of course, 2014 just started, so we're getting the things started.
Still the honeymoon phase, but
still
in
the
many
honeymoon
ways,
phase.
But still, in many ways, the honeymoon phase is over especially when you talk about this universal pre-K thing.
Yeah.
The irony is that the same day Mayor de Blasio stood in Brooklyn and said, we are going to outlaw stop and frisk as we know it. I had a friend call me and tell me he was stopped and searched. That's the irony of it.
Wow.
I'm lucky I don't have a car. But I think it's important to put things in political perspective. I think Reverend Al Sharpton brings certain things to the table. Yes, he's charismatic. Wherever he goes, the media follows. But, if Reverend Al Sharpton gets up in front of, a community of 1,000 people and says, I want this to happen, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And you also have to remember that the politics in Albany, they don't care about the will of the majority necessarily. They operate within their own vacuum up there. I remember I was up there a few years ago, and if you walk and you have a pin that says that you're a legislator, all the employees they really gravel to you up there. You walk into the elevators and everyone is good day, Senator, good day. You're completely at your own whim when it comes to Albany, and so I don't think they really care about what Reverend Al Sharpton says or
I think you have to give
says.
a certain amount of, given the fact that he has the ability to organize a grassroots movement. Look at what happened in the Trayvon Martin situation.
That would have to be a statewide movement, because where Al Sharpton is strong with is right here in the 5 boroughs where he already has the support. Mayor de Blasio doesn't really have a problem, even with Albany lawmakers who live within the 5 boroughs. His problem is with upstate lawmakers. And I don't think Reverend Sharpton, and I should probably say that he doesn't have as much clout, but I think he's going to have to do, in order for this to be effective, the grassroots movement has to take place upstate, not downstate.
Give me a little bit about this. Mayor de Blasio talked about a tale of two cities in his campaign speech. We heard a lot about that in the State of the City, dealing with a tale of two cities. How closer are we now to seeing one city Or are we just going to see a tale of two cities just continue for some time?
Or a city with two tails.
Yes.
I think it's important to understand that the inequalities that run in New York City are so deep, and they've been here for so long. I think we have to get to a place where we first recognize where the inequalities exist and at least try to level them out. For the 400,000 people who live in New York City public housing, we know what the inequality looks like. There was a report that stated that for the average complaint, it took 282 days to get a resolution. That's almost a year. So you have people who've been living in public housing where they don't really have rights, according to NYCHA. They've been treated as if they've been second-class citizens. I can't tell you, if Cindy or I complained to our landlord about a problem that was taking place in our apartment, it took almost a year to fix it, we would go to bat. We would go. She's a lawyer. Her landlord's smart. But, you know, all the people who would take their landlords to court, etc., if you lived in NYCHA for years, you've been ignored as if you don't even exist. So we have to get to a decent level where we understand what the inequalities really mean for people who live in New York City.
Yeah, I think the tale of two cities was born with the Bloomberg era. When Bloomberg became mayor, he really just fed to the rich of this city. And it became the playground for the rich. New York City is no longer the mecca of art or culture. It's the playground for the rich. You're seeing really amazing establishments going out of business. You're seeing people's rents just raised through the roof. No one can afford rent anymore. And I talk to my friends and colleagues in the city all the time about this. When will the bubble burst? I mean, there has to be a point where it just becomes too expensive for people to afford to live here anymore. And we all struggle to pay rent. Like, that's the life of a New Yorker. We're constantly struggling to pay rent. When will we say, okay, this has to end, right? When can we say, landlord, you cannot raise my rent anymore? We don't have that kind of power. So with Blasio in office now, yes, we have someone that at least acknowledges that there is a problem with income inequality in the city, and there is a problem with housing. Housing is such a big problem in the city, and it's so hard for people. We're seeing more homeless. We're seeing people living in the worst decrepit conditions. So at least now we have a mayor that's acknowledging that income inequality is a problem. Because I don't think Bloomberg ever actually acknowledged that. It's a step. But for Blasio to actually do something about this problem, we're going to have to see a lot more public housing buildings being, created, and we're going to see a lot. It's going to be a huge progress. It's going to be a long way to go.
Pick that up with Roy when we return here on Perspective. Stay with us. Got to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after this.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science. After that, I'm going to get my law degree. Then I'm going to come back to Detroit, boost the economy, become the mayor or something, try to make the situation better for other people. I feel like I owe it to the city. I'm determined. It's going to happen. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
Adopting a new pet is a rewarding experience. And Shelter Pets makes super pets. Your new best friend will steal your heart, bring you happiness, and enrich your life for years to come. You can make a difference in the life of an animal. Adopt and bring home a Shelter Pet today. To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Live with a human for a while, and you get to know a few things. Like, I know she does strange tricks for no treats. But the one thing I will never for the life of me know is how she gets so tiny and inside that box. Natalie, how do you get so tiny?
Because in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many methods just for you to know.
And also Roy Paul about the New York City Mayor, Bill de Blasio. Unpacking his State of the City address, how effective was it? How realistic is it? That's the topic of conversation. Before the break, Roy, we were talking a little bit about the inequality in housing. Just want to give you the opportunity to share a little bit.
Well, I just think it's important. We were talking a little bit about the pre-K funding and the inability or the unwillingness in Albany to tax the wealthiest of Americans out of fear that they're going to leave New York City. Well, that's really been happening with the poorest of New York City. If you look at, it used to be in housing where if you lived further out from Manhattan, it was cheaper to live. Now the bubble is bursting to where, it doesn't matter if you're living far out in certain places of the city, you're still paying a lot of money in rent. And those people who can't afford to stay here have been forced to leave and go to southern states or other states. And so no one's really making a big stink in Albany about the fact that lower income people, those who can't afford to stay in New York City, are forced out of the state. But when it comes to potentially taking rich people and forcing them out of the state, everyone has a problem with that.
I know. We got a little technical difficulty. I want you to stay with us right quick. We're going to come right back. Just got to get this little mic thing straight. We'll be right back in just 30 seconds.
This was me. And Mom and Dad. And my big brother Alex. And Jack. This was the day that I learned that sandals get their name from sand. And that the ocean is bigger than all of us. This was the day we all got to forget that I was sick. This was my wish.
Barry, time is running out. According to my calculations, 1 in 5 kids in America struggles with hunger. How can so many children face hunger when there's more than enough food to feed them all? You're right, Barry. We can help solve hunger by teaming up with Feeding America to get food to hungry kids in communities across the country.
Help Flint and the Feeding America network of food banks get food to the people who need it in your community. Find your local Feeding America food bank at feedingamerica.org/hunger.
Together, we're Feeding America.
Okay, we've got our technical difficulty restated, or I should say repaired, and now we want to let Roy restate what he was saying. And I said we were talking a little bit about the mayor and the State of the City address, and you talked a little bit about universal pre-K and brought that little tie-in between universal pre-K and then housing.
Yeah, I think it's important because, I am waiting for the day where government officials, and especially the GOP in Albany, starts balking about the fact that poor people have been forced out of New York City. When you talk about the affordability in the rents, it used to be where if you lived in the further parts out of Manhattan that the rent was cheaper. Now it's gotten to the point where the bubble has burst and a lot of people who are living outer in different parts of Manhattan or in out of the boroughs are forced to leave because the rents are so high. But there's no controversy surrounding that. The controversy is started now when you talk about wealthy people potentially being taxed more and them potentially leaving the city. I don't think that's going to ever happen, and there's no study that's ever proven that if you tax wealthy Americans in New York that they're going to leave. But that's not the controversy. The controversy has never been with the poorest of the city, but only with the wealthiest.
And the one thing I know, because I'm born and raised in Harlem and lived there, my mother still lives on the west side, so, I know for a fact that, and I go get my hair cut in Harlem still, Denny Mo's, and I want to still, but when you go there, you can see somebody who pays $400 a month in rent. And then right next door, you have this condo that's worth $400,000 unoccupied. Nobody's living, a majority of vacant apartments, but yet and still you do have this tale of two cities right there, and that's just not Harlem. That's all across the city.
Yeah, a lot of those empty apartments that you're talking about are rich businessmen from foreign countries. A lot of Chinese businessmen now, they buy apartments in the city and they raise the prices of the neighborhood, right? So you're hiking up rent prices in the neighborhood, but they don't even live there, and they don't pay New York City tax because New York residents have to pay a tax. They don't pay that tax. They just buy the properties so they can sit on it. And by raising taxes on the wealthy that live in New York City, that's not going to change anything. Like what Roy was saying, just because you're taxing the wealthy of the city doesn't mean that they're going to move out. It's just going to be the same as it always been. They're going to buy property here no matter what. They're going to sit on it.
And they also inherit a tax credit by buying the property and redeveloping the property here, even though they don't live here. So here it is. You've taken advantage of the system because you got this tax credit by buying and redeveloping, but yet and still you avoid also the tax because you're not basically a New York City resident, city or state resident that has to pay either tax.
That's what rich people do right now anyway. So if you tax the wealthy, they're not going to change at what they've been doing for years now. They're going to continue to be residents outside the city but own property in the city no matter what. And this is New York. This is the mecca of media, of culture, of art, of everything. Everything happens here. Why would the wealthy want to pick up and leave? Who want to pick up and leave New York? That this is where everything is. So the wealthy, it's just because you're getting taxed a little higher doesn't mean that the wealthy are just going to pack their bags and go. They got way too much invested in the city. And for the conservative GOP to claim, oh, if we tax the rich, like everyone's going to leave. What about the poor people who can't afford to live in the city anymore? Everyone's leaving. If you want to really look at a good example, cooks and chefs in New York City are all leaving the city. There is actually a need for cooks because they're all packing up, going upstate and opening their own restaurants where they can afford restaurant space, they can afford rent, and they're doing really well for themselves. They have this whole theme of like artisanal cooking now, where it's like from the farm to the kitchen type thing. You know, like we're seeing a transition of even the middle class getting out of the city, and we're gonna run out of cooks. That's just one example. That's just one example of a certain population of New Yorkers who are leaving New York, and we're not paying attention to those people.
Let me ask you this question, Roy. When you talked about Mayor Bloomberg, one of the things that he ran on was quality of life issues. Now, many people have a lot of issues with Mayor Bloomberg, but some people will say the quality of life was definitely good. Took care of smoking, made sure that was good. He tried to talk us out of drinking soda and letting us know. But he did let you know when you go into McDonald's that you see how many calories you're about to consume when you get that Big Mac. A lot of people say that's good. That works in the area of helping with obesity in some kind of way. Are we going to see Mayor de Blasio be active in more quality of life? Because even though Mayor Bloomberg ran against it and butted up against a lot of New Yorkers for it, a lot of people were in favor of quality of life. Is this something that we can see from Mayor de Blasio?
I don't think so. I think, I remember an interview that de Blasio did, and while he did not shun the quality of life issues of Mayor de Blasio, I don't think he's going to necessarily be a champion of them himself. Now, whether or not he will let them expire or whether or not he will continue them, he probably will. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't, but I don't think he's going to necessarily try to find up new, innovative, creative ways to get involved in people's daily lives.
Although I will say that I loved Bloomberg's campaign for biking in New York City. That's where we saw city bikes. Mm-hmm. And, Blasio is not the type of person that would get rid of that. I don't think Blasio is going to maybe be as forward as Bloomberg with his quality of life campaigning, but he certainly wouldn't shy away from it. And a lot of people didn't like that soda tax or whatever, but there's some things that Bloomberg did that were good. I love
smoking.
The city
I mean, when you look at the fact that you can go into an establishment and not have to be connected, and your coat doesn't come out like smoke. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And look, de Blasio is a very liberal, hippie, former turn, he's a live and let live kind of guy. So I think he's probably okay as long as people don't break the law.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that, too. Where do you think the strong suit of Mayor de Blasio is going to come in? Because a lot of people that see were excited about the fact that here, not only is he a Democrat, but the views. What do you think is going to be the strongest thing that he's going to bring in his first term in office?
It's the income inequality issue. I think for him, he's really going to be pushing agenda that helps with housing. His pre-K plan, that's one thing he stressed a lot during his campaign is education. And it's funny because, our children are probably the most important thing to us right now, yet a lot of the Republican conservative constituents, they don't care about that. And it's just it's really about finding what's the most important thing to New Yorkers right now. And I think Blasio is really pushing the housing and pre-K education, things like that. That's where he's going to go.
Before I take this break, let me throw this in here. Because when you talk about the fact that Mayor de Blasio is dealing with this whole pre-K issue, going up against the governor, we know that marriage is already headed for divorce court. You got this whole situation where there's a whole lot more to deal with New York City and education besides pre-K. And so the question is going to be, given the fact that you have this disconnect on the pre-K issue, how much is that going to affect the other educational initiatives that are going to take place in the city? I'm giving you a commercial break to think about that. We're going to be right back right after this.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy. Oh, and she even talks to it. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
This was me. And Mom and Dad. And my big brother Alex. And Jack. This was the day that I learned that sandals get their name from sand. And that the ocean is bigger than all of us. This was the day we all got to forget that I was sick. This was my wish.
Maybe he's really focused.
Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today.
Barry, time is running out. According to my calculations, 1 in 5 kids in America struggles with hunger. How can so many children face hunger when there's more than enough food to feed them all? You're right, Barry. We can help solve hunger by teaming up with Feeding America to get food to hungry kids in communities across the country.
Help Flint and the Feeding America network of food banks get food to the people who need it in your community. Find your local Feeding America food bank at feedingamerica.org/hunger.
Together, we're Feeding America.
If I got to go to college, oh my goodness. I like discovering new things. You get to see what works for you and what doesn't. That helps you evolve as a person. You get to make like a supernova of skill or talent or whatever it is. I've always wanted to go to college. I just feel like that's my destiny. My name is Queen, and I am your dividend.
Back here on Perspectives, I gave Roy Paul, I should say, a question, and we now await his answer.
Well, your question was whether or not the city and the state issues with respect to education is going to make a difference. I think de Blasio has control over the city school system. He doesn't have control over the state, and the pre-K funding is a state-controlled system. I think that they're not going to be mutually exclusive. I think he can still have success in city schools without having the pre-K funding aspect be factored into his education policies. I think, to your other question, the main issue of his first, not just term, but year in office was and is stop and frisk. During the campaign, the only issue that really separated all of the candidates was their position on stop and frisk. Mm-hmm. That was the only divisive issue that none of them could agree on. Someone said it should be outlawed. Someone said we need a new police commissioner. Someone said that but the only issue where they all had a different point of view that you can actually nitpick was the issue of stop and frisk. And not only within his first year, but within his first month in office, he made a historic announcement on that very issue. He sent a clear message that even if nothing else is passed during his first year in office, that he was still able to get something done.
Your final comments, few seconds.
I totally agree, and I'm really excited to see what Blasio has next for us. I'm so excited that he got rid of stop and frisk, and we also need to remember that he is our city mayor, not our state. So his focus is really going to be on the city and helping people get out of poverty and find affordable housing and a great education system.
Cindy Tran, Roy Paul, thank you so much for joining us here on Perspectives. That about wraps it up for this edition of Perspectives. I'm Darren Jaime. We encourage you, stay safe, share your perspective with somebody else. It just might make a difference in their life. Take care.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many